Welcome everyone, Christine here with a discussion about Taurox the Brass Bull in Total War Warhammer 3 of the Beastmen. While the Beastmen aren't necessarily the very best race in Warhammer 3, Taurox is certainly a really powerful legendary lord. Between his faction effects, his lord skills, and just the sheer destructive capability that this guy has, I would say if you're looking to play a Beastman campaign, just buy the Silence and the Fury and you're probably going to get the very best experience with that, as opposed to buying the actual Beastman race pack, because you do get access to everything the Beastmen have, as well as extra units and regiments right now. So, the Beastman race pack is not worth getting. Taurox, however, absolutely is. But what makes Taurox so strong? Well, first off, faction effects, he gets the dread cost reduction for Minotaurs of all types, and he gets Rampage, which means maintaining momentum from successive battle victories to give Taurox rewards and bonuses. Those rewards and bonuses are very significant, but first we need to address one particular aspect about the Beastmen. One of the benefits of the Beastmen is the fact that they can spend money on various items to get them. Now, these aren't necessarily the very best items in the game, to be certain, though there are some useful things you can get here, like mutated Gorgon hide, for instance. Pretty decent item, pretty decent piece of armor. But an important item that I'm interested here is the Battle-Scarred Ungor Raider. Now, you can build as many, you can make as many of these as you want, and you can put them not only on your lord, but also on your heroes, increasing the movement range of your entire army by quite a very, very significant amount. Imagine an entire army of Beastmen heroes, each of them with an Ungor Battle-Scarred Ungor Raider. You kind of understand how things can get a bit ridiculous. And Taurox can earn more dread than anyone else because of his rampage mechanic. So he fights battles, he fills up a tier, he requires 50 marks. Once he gets to 50 marks of rampage, he can get a reward. At tier 1, I'd say the best one is leadership, but you can get things like Blood Greed ability, ward save for all your units, wins a magic power reserve capacity for his army. But reducing enemy leadership by 8 in his region is certainly very, very useful, because it will make dealing with, say, Silostra fairly easy. Now, Taurox's campaign situation is complicated. You've got the Sisters of Twilight to the south, you got Malekith to the north, Hellebron to the north, Alifanar to the east, and Silostra a bit to the southeast. I'd say Silostra is the easiest one to deal with out of all of them, but that doesn't necessarily mean she's that significantly easy to tackle compared to some of the other options. Suffice to say, the other Beastman campaigns are significantly easier to deal with than Taurox's. Also, his quest battle is a bit of a tricky one to deal with early on. And Beastmen do have inherent limitations early on, because not only can you not recruit units for the most part until you unlock various ruination levels, which kind of ruins the sentiment over here, though you can get things at tier 5. Like at tier 5 you get to a point where, yeah, basically you've gotten everything unlocked. But it's not just about unlocking it, it's about having absolutely no unit capacity until you spend dread on those units. I feel like just having some unit capacity, like let's say 4 for Ungor Spearmen, for instance, should sound reasonable. Like 4 for these free types, minus perhaps Feral Manticores, but then again, Harpies, who cares about that? So having more unit capacity would be great for a Beastman campaign. And then, 2 for Centaurs, all that. That would be good, I feel like. Maybe 2 for Tsangors as well. That would certainly improve the situation from my perspective with regards to the Beastmen. But regardless, you do have a good level of power if you can play Taurox, because you have a decent number of regiments and renown that you can use in your campaign. And hell, with the addition of Tsangors, you do have some really powerful frontline units that you can use that aren't called Minotaurs. In point of fact, I would dare argue that Tsangors can be more useful than Minotaurs, because while they certainly don't have the damage of Minotaurs, they are far more durable as a unit. And Beastmen are also going to get Centaurs of Tzeentch. How you're going to pronounce that? Yeah, I've seen some weird names online with respect to that. But all of this is very good with respect, like the rampage mechanic give you benefits, and these benefits can be very substantial. Like at tier 2, you get, like for every tier you get some dread, but at tier 2 you get dread gain from battles plus 25%, or momentum cost to replenish campaign movement range is reduced by 1. So instead of costing 3, it's going to cost 2. And then cataclysmic rampage, you get the ability of increasing your hero recruit rank by 5. For every type of hero, you gotta choose which one you want. But quite importantly, you also reduce the dread cost for increasing the capacity of these heroes, because hero capacity in a Beastman campaign is increased to dread. Now, I do feel they need to change the way dread works, or maybe just put another resource over there, because right now everything costing dread is not especially great. I feel like unit capacity, lords and hero capacity, upgrades over here, all of it tied to dread. It doesn't lend itself to a particularly great system in a Beastman campaign, because it just means you want to hoard as much dread. Like, what you want to do in a Beastman campaign is you want to get all of these upgrades, then you want to get all of these upgrades and army capacity, and that's how you become powerful. Then you do certainly become very, very powerful, but it does mean you're fighting without increasing your unit caps. I think like units do need their own different unit cap system or resource, as opposed to everything being tied to dread, and you're spending dread over here. That's kind of the issue. So yeah, I would say the Beastmen need a bit of a rework, or just the addition of another resource. Like Chaos Dwarves work very well because they have 2 different resource types that they use. So that you've got materials and you've got armaments, and it actually ends up working far better. Beastmen could use that an addition of another system. What they would call it, I don't know, but regardless. Now, the very powerful thing that Taurox has access to is once you get to tier 1 of a rampage, you can use these marks of momentum to replenish his movement range. Now, when you're attacking a settlement and you raise it, because you can only raise it or set up set up a hurt zone. But when you're raising a settlement, it is important you can go for a bit of casualty replenishment. That won't give you quite the same benefit, if you will, but that casualty replenishment will certainly help you out, because that particular choice gives you a bit of movement range, or a medium amount of movement range, as opposed to a very small amount. So if we, and yes, I'm using an Autoresolve mod, so if we go over here, you get a small amount of additional movement, whereas raising a settlement like this gives you smaller amount of money, but gives you a moderate amount of additional movement. And also 10% casualty replenishment, which is certainly something you can use to great effect. And yes, Taurox is absolutely ridiculous. Especially once it gets to tier 2 and you reduce the cost of replenishing campaign movement by 1. And yes, it can be tricky sometimes to maintain a full rampage all the way to the highest possible tier, but the absurd power that Taurox does have access to in a campaign is just quite something else, I would dare argue. In terms of his skill line, if we look at it, he has the brass body ability, so he's got a good amount of damage resistance if he's engaged in melee, blood for the blood god, spell resistance for his entire army. He enables dazed on contact, so he's reducing melee defense and speed. He gets weapon strength, charge bonus. He gets bestial rage +1. He gets an additional stack of river blood regen, a regen effect for winning battle. Now, one of the effects he gets is Rivers of Blood. Effects in regions after winning battle stacks up 3 times, stacks up 4 times with that special skill, and his rating stance is upgraded to Juggernaut rating stance. Oh yes, he is the Juggernaut. He is quite absurdly good from that particular perspective. and you can end up seeing just how much power Taurox does actually have. It's kind of interesting to think about, like, the fact that the raise effect actually stacks, like, in terms of its duration, of course, not in terms of its effect. But you can have, like, basically close to 20% campaign movement range. Yeah, if only some other races could have that. Wouldn't that be wonderful, creative assembly? Wouldn't that be freaking wonderful? You do start with a mage, and you can get to Gorbel. You'll get an event relatively quickly to get one. You get replenishment, and you get Gore Greed for Minotaurs, replaces Blood Greed, and you can get Ward Save and melee defense for your Minotaurs, or you can get melee attack and Terror. Personally, I always prefer the Ward Save. I think it's more useful. Besides, you can get Terror for other means. You're not going to be lacking that in a Beastman campaign. It's just an enormous level of power that you do have access in this campaign, and I would say this is the only campaign, the only Beastman campaign that's actually worth playing, from my personal perspective. Let me know what you guys think. Costin signing out. Stay tuned for more.